Avengers is the greatest crossover event in history. Troll Hunters, hold my burrito. Yes. Yes. Greetings everyone, I am Emmett, and this is my review of Trollhunters Rise of the Titans. Now I will try to avoid major spoilers, but we need more Trollhunters content! Okay, since when are you my boss? I represent your future. Everything you do is in service of me. Oh. So what about that content? I am approximately 2.7 steps ahead of you. Eh? I'm filming a review right now. Well, in that case, I'll just park my caboose right here. Okay. I've been a fan of Trollhunters from the start. The first season I thought was just great fantasy adventure entertainment. The second and third seasons left me a little more mixed, but I can hardly really blame them because they had a pretty thankless task of redirecting the show after the tragedy that took Anton Yelchin from us. So even though the third season felt a little rushed and misguided to me, Three Below and Wizards more than made up for it by being as enjoyable as they were, with Wizards doing a great job of setting up the stakes for this grand finale of a film. The movie doesn't waste a moment jumping right into the action. After a 4-minute intro, recapping everything that had happened in the previous shows. This intro is harmless, but completely unnecessary since Toby retells it all in the actual movie in kind of an Olafian fashion.
Their parents are dead.
But here's the thing about this movie. It's moving so fast that any nitpicks I have are boom, gone. Moving on to the bigger, better things. And on the topic of nitpicks, I might as well get this out of the way now so that I can focus on the positive later on. What the heck is going on with Steve in this movie? I mean, I know what's happening, but why? Why that? That was kind of scarring.
I've been traumatized!
The only explanation that I can come up with is that the writers were trying to find any excuse they could to put Steve out of commission. I guess he is technically the most useless character, but you could have found something for him to do. Anything, please, anything but this. The rest of the series had convinced me that I am indeed a Steve fan. But then this movie comes along, and every single second that he's on screen, I am quite literally Apparently, Aja never gave Steve the proper Acaridian sex education he required, and that is not a sentence I ever thought I'd hear myself say. But I don't want to think about that any more than I have to. So let's move on. So theaters are still struggling after the pandemic, but I have gotten to see some big movies on the big screen. Godzilla vs. Kong and A Quiet Place, I am very glad to have received the theater experience. But the last two movies that I saw were Peter Rabbit 2 and Black Widow. And sadly, I would have much rather seen this movie on the biggest screen that I can find. You know, when you go to the movies, you kind of want to see something big and spectacular. Well, if nothing else, Trollhunters Rise of the Titans delivers on the spectacle. I was always proud of the scale and action of this series, and this movie doesn't just step it up a notch, it jumps over whatever notch system you're using. You probably thought the intro to this video was a joke. Memes aside, I'm pretty sure the creators saw Avengers and then thought to themselves, we can do that, right? Yeah, we can do that. Well, let's do it. I am proud to say this has almost Infinity War level non-stop action, as well as a similar sense of desperation and racing against the clock. Most movies that have a ticking clock and a certain event that's going to happen in a certain number of hours, it always feels a little, I don't know, just the clock is there, but you don't really feel it in the characters. Every single character is scrambling so fast. Decisions are being made in a split second, and there's so much going on in every action scene. You really feel the weight and the impact that everything is having. The characters get beat up quite a bit throughout the entire movie. You really get the sense that the creators have an understanding of each character's strengths and weaknesses, because each fight scene has Like everybody brings their A game. Everybody has different powers that are used, different plans. You can kind of see their personalities come through. Some characters want to like stand back and think about things. Some characters rush into battle. Dukesy usually has a spell up his sleeve that he can use in a surprising way. Everybody gets something cool to do, except Steve. I'm sure if you boil it down, the actual like plot and story beats are pretty unnoteworthy. The premise is pretty stock. Ancient magical baddie wants to resurrect another ancient magical baddie so that they can level the playing field and destroy the world and start new, and your main team of heroes has to reunite so that they can go on a journey to race against the ticking clock to fight the magical baddies. At this point, that should be pretty tired, since everybody wants to be the Avengers, everybody wants to have world-ending stakes. But to me, a familiar premise doesn't really matter if you find a new way of approaching it. And I think they pull that off here. The villains are just creepy enough to stand apart from their ilk, and there are a few action beats where I can honestly say I've never quite seen that before. Take the opening train fight scene, for example. Like, we've seen a lot of fight scenes either in a train subway type thing or like on a train trying to stop it or stuff like that. So it seems like, yeah, a pretty straightforward premise. But they do some really cool stuff here. And like just the fine details of how the actual fight play out is what I haven't seen before. Because any premise has technically been done before. What matters is what you can do with it, with your situation and your characters. And like I said before, they know their characters and what they can do with any situation they're given. And I like that. And even if it is stuff that I have seen before, I don't really mind. If Del Toro wants to step in and recreate Pacific Rim for a scene, I'm not complaining. Pacific Rim rocks. There's honestly, like, a lot that I kind of want to talk about. Like, each scene has something where I'm like, hey, that's cool. But I don't need to talk about it, because I want you to experience it for yourself. I will say that while a lot of movies have good ideas, to me, most movies only do the bare minimum of what they need to do to get those ideas across. This movie feels like, oh, you have a cool idea? Well, don't stop there. Here's another cool idea. What else can you do with this situation? Like another scene, I don't think it's spoilers because it's just kind of a random scene in the middle, but they're trying to escape a troll market, and most movies would just be like, oh yeah, they escape in the nick of time. But no, in this movie, they're trying to draw the doorway with the magical portal stone, I forget what it's called, and it breaks. It snaps off because they're rushing so much that they just break it off, and then Jim on the other side has to pick up the stone with his bare hands while it's burning his hands, and then finishes the circle. Stuff like that I feel like is pretty good action writing, because you shouldn't make things easy for your characters. Before I move on from the spectacle, I want to give a shout out to the animation. While the characters basically look the same, the environments have really stepped up a notch. Like I said, I really wish I could see this in the theaters because I'd say it's worthy of it. And now I want to talk about the characters. Keeping in line with Wizards, I thought Dukesy was really cool. Again, with the Avengers comparison, he's basically like if you took the powers and mysteriousness of Doctor Strange, but then made him as prominent as Tony. There were a couple of moments where I thought his magic could seem a little easy fix-y, mostly because it's never really explained how it works or what his limitations are. But the thing is, it still never feels easy. You can tell that like he's struggling to figure out a solution, so it didn't really bother me that much. I commend some of the risks taken involving the side characters and their fates. So often in movies these days, especially kids or franchise movies, it doesn't seem like anyone has any guts anymore. And this movie gets pretty gutsy at times. Until the ending, that is. Personally, this is the most I've cared about Jim since the voice change. They set up a pretty good arc with him questioning, like, who is he if he doesn't have the amulet? Though I guess now that I think about it, that is kind of similar to what Claire went through with her staff, which is similar to what Thor went through with his hammer, which is similar to what anybody went through when the message is, it was inside of you all along. But again, they find enough ways to freshen it up that it doesn't feel blatantly stale. Even if there are familiar elements, that's not a fatal flaw. What is a fatal flaw is the ending. And I mean the very ending, not the climax, the literal, kind of epilogue. I won't go into it, because of spoilers, obviously. But let's just say the Avengers comparisons continue to the point where a certain character makes a certain decision for the sake of a kind of surface level conclusion, and it leaves me thinking, wait, what did you do? Here I thought you had balls, troll hunters, that then you had to go and get the old snip snip. So those are my thoughts. Hopefully they were enlightening. If you like the Tales of Arcadia series, I doubt this will really disappoint you. If you're new, you have a lot of catching up to do. This is the finale of 3 different shows. So I wouldn't really suggest watching this out of context. You at least need to watch the first season of Trollhunters and Wizards. Maybe 3. I don't know. You should watch all of them. They're good shows. Just watch them. And if you have seen the movie, what did you think? Have any questions or thoughts? Comment below.
I have a question. Are you doing reviews now?
Right. You see, I've always been interested in doing reviews, and recently I've been kicking around the idea of widening the spectrum of content that I put on this channel. Mostly because recently making stuff has been taking me a really long time, just because I'm so busy with life. But I still want to entertain you guys in the meantime. And I think it would help if I stopped relying so much on my previous formula, and instead try to make some shorter and simpler videos that are easier to edit. Plus, most of my following is drawn from the Trollhunters fanbase, so I just assumed you guys would be interested.
Wait. That's it. This whole time I thought you were the key, but I was wrong.
Hey,
Trollhunters is the key. It's been the key all along. I must go back to the past one more time and make sure things work out even better.
you can't just do that. Think about the consequences. Wouldn't you just be erasing me from existence?
There's no time to think about consequences. I must do what I must do.
I'm you from the future.
And I'm both of you suckers from the future. Ha! I win.
That's where you're wrong, older in it.
Good God. It's God.
You can't just go back and change your mistakes. You must learn from them.
But why can't I hit the reset button and start from the beginning with this whole series I made?
Because you can't retcon life. Now get...
No!
Short trip? You okay there, pal? You look like you've been kicked in the face by God! On a side note, Netflix is planning on adapting the Redwall series, and if you want to know why that's significant, my brother and I have an entire episode of our podcast dedicated to explaining the potential of such a project. Long story short, as far as I know, none of the production crew are overlapping between these two movies, but if this is the kind of kids content that Netflix is willing to put out, that leaves me very hopeful for the future. Because it's still a kid-based series, but it gets pretty edgy, it gets intense. Who knows, maybe they can rope in Del Toro to be a creative consultant on some of the action scenes. That would be kind of amazing.